Hello, my waxy weirdos. We're back after a semi-long absence, and guess what? I have updated the shop. Finally, yes. I have spruced up my labels, changed the product packaging, and I have released new scents. Also, I've signed up for my first live in-person vending event, my first market, so we will get into all of that later. But yes, where we left off in my previous wax chat was all about, I'm going to be putting everything on sale, getting rid of all the old stuff, blah, 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 blah. And I had set a timeline for the fall to reopen my shop. Decided to do it a little bit earlier, so here we are. First thing is first, the update. Let us chit chat about the update. Over the summer, I have been working so hard to zhuzh up white bat wax. I know on the surface it sounds like, all you have to do is make new candles. How hard could it be? It's not necessarily that it's difficult. It's simply that it's a lot of small steps. And the whole cumulative effect of everything is, voila, a brand refresh. But yes, it's been a lot of work just to, quote unquote, just to pour some candles, yeah? But I love the hard work. Obviously, this is why I do a million things with my time creatively. Illustrator, I have a vintage shop, and then I have my candle shop. So, we always got to be busy. We always have to keep making things that are beautiful and improving things. So here we are. I have transitioned my candles, speaking of making things beautiful, I have transitioned my candles from tins into beautiful, glossy black glass vessels. I started with tins because I thought it was going to be more user-friendly, easily accessible, etc., etc. I ended up not liking the tins. They worked out for what they were, but they just were not enough for me. I needed something that was more elevated, beautiful, more expensive for me, but that's okay. Not only did I change the packaging for the candles, but I have also revamped the wax melts entirely. I had been making them in a particular size and the colors, it was a highly saturated color. They even had colorful labels and all of that. And I decided to still keep them colored, but I've changed the labeling to just a sleek black label. So we're going with the whole black and white with little touches of bright, fun color. This particular iteration of the brand feels more appropriate to the aesthetic direction that I had in mind from the start. It's simply one of those things where it's a situation where I had the idea in mind, but it isn't until I start creating the tangible products that I start seeing where I'm lacking and where things need to change. So I needed to go through that first design phase in order to pick and choose what's working, what's not working, and how I wanted to move forward for White Bat Wax 2.0, if you will. The brand is still very playful with touches of color here and there, but it is elevated, and that is exactly what I wanted. And of course, this isn't going to be the final evolution of the brand, but this is starting to feel finally like the first real version of White Bat Wax that I can really say I'm proud of and I think just looks so good. It's closer to what the vision was from the get-go. So my current lineup of candles are miniature candles. When I first started releasing candles, I was releasing the larger 2-wick tins. I've decided to get rid of that size, not permanently, but while I'm transitioning into this new evolution of the brand, I have decided to start with miniature candles. They're small. They're about 2.5 ounces. I fill them a little bit more than 2.5 ounces, closer to 3, but technically the specifications of the vessels are 2.5. So they're small. However, because of the wax that I use a premium coconut apricot wax. This wax will burn if the candle is properly cared for at least 20 to 25 hours, and it can go a little bit more than that if circumstances are such that they're not in a drafty room, the wicks are taken care of, blah, blah, blah. All of the things you have to do to be a good candle owner. Now, if you're not careful, sure, they're still going to last you about 20 hours, but if you're really a candle connoisseur and you take care of the candle the way you're supposed to, they will last longer than that, which is fabulous. So either way, you're going to get a great long burn, even in these little teensy little 2.5 ounce mini candles. Eventually, yeah, I will be releasing larger vessels, but I did not want to overwhelm myself at the moment. Overwhelm is the big factor here because although I'm no stranger to hard work, I'm not necessarily referring to overwhelm in terms of labor, but it's really overwhelm in terms of product and physical space limitations. I don't want to overproduce candles and then have them sitting on the shelves for months. And I'm kind of teeter-tottering on offering the larger candles as pre-orders. So that way I can set a release date, I can take pre-orders until that date so that I know how many to produce. And then once I see where the interest is with particular scents, then I can carry a few in stock at all times. So I don't know. I have not figured all of this out yet. I'm still working out the details in this cobwebby brain of mine. So I say cobwebby not because it's empty, but because it's so full that it's just, it's the cobwebs, the spiders have started moving in because there's just so much to climb on, to build a web from. I know cobweb was a bad metaphor, but you get it. It's so stuffed full up in here that I can't find all the creepy crawlies that are crawling up in here. So they're making themselves at home by building cobwebs. I'm not an airhead, I assure you. Anyways, to be determined, I'm working out the details on the larger vessels. So yes, if you head over to White Bat Wax now, you will see the new products, the new scents, the new look, the wax melts, how they've changed, the new little mini vessels, all of it. You will see all of it. So take a look at the website. Now, dun dun dun, the markets. I mentioned that I signed up for a vendor market at the beginning of this wax chat. Markets. Oh, the way I had been waffling back and forth about this. Should I do it? Should I not do it? Are they worth it? Is it going to be too much work? Can I get it done? Blah, 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 blah. Markets are a lot of work for one person. The physical labor, the social battery depletion, all of it. Now, I am no stranger to hard work. I know that it is well within my capability to vend at a market, but the question was, should I? Would it be the healthiest thing for me to do on top of everything else that I have going on? Because White Bat Wax to this day is still kind of a hobby project. It's a side hustle. I am a full-time illustrator, and then I have vintage shops, and I do all sorts of other things aside from this. So I just didn't know if it was such a good idea to jump into it. I sat on it and I put it away. I filed it away up in the attic that is my brain, up there with all the cobwebs and the spiders. I filed it away. And then a few weeks ago, on a whim, because this is how it is, I am a slave to my own whims, I signed up for a small market. I knew the event would not necessarily be my target demographic. I knew that. But I thought it would be wise to test out the entire vending process from top to bottom, start to finish, from signing up, getting there, setting up my booth, interacting with people, doing all of the things, and just spending an entire day there immersed in it would be a really good learning experience. Demographic, it doesn't matter. I just needed to try this out before I dove headfirst into a market that was even more expensive and larger and, a learning experience. All of that to say, could I? Well, challenge accepted. Market day came and went. And yes, I was so correct about the crowd. The crowd was not necessarily for me, but I ended up recovering the high booth fee. And not only did I recover the booth fee, but I also walked away with money to reinvest back into the booth. So big profit, no, but I did walk away with something more valuable, which is feedback and vending experience. I signed up and I paid tuition to learn. And that's basically how I saw this entire experience. And that's exactly what I did. I was able to see in real time what worked and what didn't work in terms of layout and display. And the feedback about the design was all positive, which is fabulous. This was my first market ever. So of course, I have to be very nitpicky because it's who I am. I'm very particular about what I do. And I didn't want to go into this with the attitude that, oh, it's my first market, so it doesn't matter, if my displays are shit. It doesn't matter if my display is, less than perfect because, truthfully, nothing is ever going to be perfect. But I wanted to give myself a fair shot. I didn't want to leave this market thinking, oh, I didn't perform well because of the way my booth looked. I didn't want my booth aesthetics to be the reason why I didn't perform well. I wanted the reason that I wasn't going to perform well to be based on my product and the crowd. Does that make any sense at all? It's not that I performed poorly. Like I said, I did make my booth feedback. I did make a profit, but the crowd was definitely more, I hesitate to say on the younger side. It was mostly teenagers and I would say young people in their very early 20s. And they were mostly there for vintage clothing and things of that nature. They weren't really interested in premium candles. However, even those kids were coming into my booth and telling me how much they loved the aesthetic. And I'm not talking just kids here. Even the older crowd, middle age and above that was walking in was saying, oh, we love your vibe. What do you have going on here? And it was overall a wonderful experience in terms of getting the feedback on my booth. So me being me, that was part of the challenge. Walking away in the red would have definitely been disappointing. But part of the challenge for me was setting up at a place where I know the market crowd wasn't necessarily for me, but could I win them over enough to make my feedback and walk away with some cash? And I did. So there you go. Of course, this is my first market, and all of the positive feedback aside, of course, nothing is perfect. There are a million things that I dislike about my booth and I wish to change/improve. But I know that the vibe is exactly where it needed to be. So I'm on the right path. Definitely have some changes for the future. I told myself to try anywhere from 3 to 5 markets to gauge whether or not this is something that is worth the effort and my time. So the first one, down, learning experience, awesome, totally worth it. Moving on. What's next? Continuing to develop this phase of white bat wax, of course. With my fresh little revamp, I am more or less hitting my stride in terms of creating, ideating, and doing all of those wonderful things that are necessary for running an indie candle brand. So yeah, aside from working on product and figuring out how to release the larger vessels, I will be working on my vendor booth and all market-related shenanigans in the background. Perhaps 2027 will be the year that I fully take this little candle freak show on the road. I kind of have to. See, I've already invested quite a bit of money in a booth, and this whole process, guys, vending at a booth is exhausting. So I've already done it once, and it will only get easier with time, right? And remember, I'm doing all of this by myself with no help. So I figure if I can get a couple markets down, eventually it's just going to get easier. And getting my name out there, getting recognition, feedback, all of those things, it'll help my little web shop because truth be told, as crazy as it sounds coming from me, the little miss, desert hermit, I prefer interacting with people in person rather than sitting at home worrying about having to film or take photos for social media. You can see that I don't update my social media with any regularity. I have a TikTok. I rarely use it. My Instagram, I post every once in a while, but just being out there and immediately getting the feedback and that whole physical aspect of being in 3D space is just, it's cooler. It's cooler for me. I don't know. It's more enjoyable. Call me crazy because, like I said, I tend to be the hermity creature, the hermity desert vampire in her cave, all by herself all day. But every once in a while, it's nice to get out there and to interact with the world at large. So that's where we are. continuing to work on the brand, to elevate the aesthetic, and to plan for future markets. So there we go. That's all I have to say for today. Thank you for joining me for this wax chat. Once again, please head on over to my website and take a look at all of the new goodies. I'm excited for this new aesthetic direction that we're going in. It's not a huge change from what I had done upon first launching the shop, but you can definitely see where we're going. And it just looks so cool. And the new fragrances that I have are wonderful. Oh, I love what I've got going on here, and it's only going to go up from here. So thank you once again for being here. Head over to the shop, grab yourself some candles, some wax melts. Join me on social media. Why don't ya? Instagram is my favorite. So join me over there if you have an Instagram, and that is going to do it for today. Keep smelling good, ya weirdos, and I will see you in the next one.